So, welcome to our Being a Psychology, Criminology and Counselling student webinar. My name is Marcus and I work in the student recruitment team at Chichester University. And I'm joined by Sarah and Abby, who are both psychology students in your third year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, starting off with research in university. So, Sarah, if I start off with you, what steps did you take before joining university?
So firstly, I didn't quite know what course I wanted to study. So it was a lot of kind of personal trying to figure out which course was right for me. And after a bit of a journey of thinking I wanted to study art, I settled on psychology because it was something that could help lots of different people in the world. And that's what I kind of wanted to do with my career. So I researched using UCAS, lots of universities that covered psychology, which pretty much most universities across the country did. So it was a matter of narrowing them down to which kind of unis covered different aspects of the course that I was most passionate into. And for me, I looked at them slightly closer to home because I didn't really want to go really far away from uni. So I ended up with a kind of a smaller pool of unis that I then looked at their course, attended their open days, attended any campus tours that I could to get a real feel of what the actual university environment was like, what the campus felt like, what the community was like. And alongside looking at what the course covered, I took as many opportunities as I could to meet lecturers, to talk to them about what the course covered, talk to students who are studying your course, to ask them questions or things you might have, and they'll give you more of an insight of what the course is actually like. And then I ended up on finding that Chichester was the right place for me.
Nice, cool. And Abby, how did you feel about going to university?
I felt very mixed between excited but also a bit nervous about, because I'd always lived at home before, so I'd never moved out, and I was so excited for the new opportunity and sort of meet so many new people and be away from home, especially as during lockdown we were all stuck at home for so long. But I was definitely very nervous as I didn't know what to expect, and I came from a very small sixth form where I knew everyone and my teachers knew me, so going to university felt quite scary a little bit, but I think it was more excitement and just wanting to get there and settle in, really.
Yeah, understandable. And Sarah, what would be your top tip when deciding on universities?
I think, like I said before, go try and visit the universities themselves. I think there's only so much that you can see via a website or what UCAS can tell you. But actually going there in person, so go to campus tours, go to open days, applicant days if you get an opportunity, and I feel like you'll get a feel of what the university is like. And for me, it was more of a gut feeling that I wanted to choose a university that felt right for me. And when I went to Chichester, it was a lot smaller university, and it felt like I could actually, like Abby was saying about her sixth form, that her teachers knew her. At Chichester, your lecturers know who you are. You can try and blend into the background, but because it's a smaller university, they want to give you the support that you deserve, and they'll know you by name, they know what you're interested in, and the lecturers care about you. So I'd try and find a university that kind of fits what you're looking for. But I think going to the actual university themselves and talking to those lecturers can give you a bit more of an impression of what it'd be like to actually study and live in the place that you might be for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, cool, perfect. And Abby, how about you? What would your top tip be?
Just remember to try and consider everything. For example, you might find the perfect uni, but also do consider the location of that university, because for me, I wanted to be far away enough from home to justify sort of moving out and paying rent, but I also wanted to be in a position where if I wanted to come home for the weekend, I could quite easily without it being too far from where I lived. So I think you consider there's so many different factors to consider, you've got to love the course, you've got to love what modules are on the course, but also the actual town that you're living in or city, as Sarah was saying, you're going to live here for at least the next 3 years, so you really do want to sort of love the sort of area that you're in to have that full uni experience.
Yeah, and I agree. And going on to our next slide is going through what my top tips would be. I mean, to be honest, you've covered most of them. But just running through them, the biggest tip that I would have is to visit the university as much as possible. So, like Sarah mentioned, there's things like open days, campus tours. Some universities run taster sessions and applicant days as well. So being able to go to the university and meeting your lecturers and current students as well is a really good opportunity for you. Another top tip would be to test run that journey from university to home. If you're a student that is going to be commuting, you're going to want to make sure that that journey is doable for pretty much every day of the week. And also, if you're a student that will be wanting to go home at things like Christmas and Easter, then you're also going to want to make sure that that is a journey that will be doable for you to do frequently. Like Abby mentioned as well, at university you are going to be living there for well at least 3 years if you do the full undergraduate degree. So you might want to visit the local area before you start. This way you can see what sort of stuff there is to do in the area, because you're going to want to sort of fill your free time with as much stuff as you can. So visiting the local area before is a really good opportunity to see what there is about around the university. And finally would be to ask questions. So when you come on these open days or campus tours, ask as many questions as you can, especially if there's current students there that you can talk to, because that's where you'll get a good feel of the university. So getting started at the university. So Abby, I'll start with you for this one. What was your first week at university like?
So I lived in halls that were on Chichester campus. So the start of the week, I obviously moved in, unpacked everything, and that afternoon, once my parents had left, I then sat in the kitchen. I was the last person to move in, so all my flatmates were already there. So the four of us sat in the kitchen and just kind of like got to know each other, played different sort of games, like where you just find out weird facts about one another. And then we decided kind of what freshers events we'd like to go to together. So we had someone to go with, and we kind of looked through what was on that week and signed up to some events. Obviously, some we'd already booked beforehand before moving to uni, but we signed up to different sort of events together. So we had someone to go with and not, feel as scary about going to new events. And yeah, it was just really fun. I just tried loads of new activities because all the societies put on different like events that you can just try out to see if it's like your cup of tea. So I just sort of threw myself into things that I hadn't really done before, and just sort of tried new things. I did like a yoga session. I did a psychology memory session thing. It was quite exciting. And yeah, just tried loads of new stuff and just went out and really just kind of threw myself in the deep end and made conversation with people that I didn't know, obviously, and just sort of started chatting to them to try and see what course they were on and where they were sort of staying and everything like that, and just met so many new people in that week, really. Yeah.
Perfect. And Sarah, how about you? How did you find settling into student life?
It's very busy at the start of the term. Like freshers can be very intense, but also it's very fun because you're meeting loads of new people, and despite it being intense, you're kind of happy that you're kept busy. For me, I knew that because it was a bit scary coming to uni, moving away from home, kind of having so many things to do kept your mind kind of away from overthinking lots of things that you might have been worrying about. But because you're in halls, you're moving into, say, 4 to 7 other people, you're instantly surrounded by people that you can talk to. You make friends very, very quickly. Like Abby said, like I went along to as many society taster sessions as I could, and your course will have like introductory sessions, so you can meet people on your course. So I think for me, I found it quite exciting, and it was fun moving and settling into student life. Despite you've got the small worries and bits like that, it was quickly kind of settled by you quickly made new friends through societies. Like I started doing like cheerleading, acting society, bit of psychology as well, like Abby said. So there's loads of things to get involved with. So any kind of worries that I had were kind of put to bed because I didn't have time to think about them. And I think it was quite nice because when you're moving into your flat, everyone's kind of trying to adjust to living with new people as well. So that everyone was quite supportive, and there was people from the older years to kind of help move us into halls as well. So they were there to kind of support you on any questions you might have about actually how to get to uni, like bus timetables. Because I lived in Fishbourne halls of residence, which were off-campus accommodation, still managed by the university. But you can either walk or get a bus there. So it's kind of asking them for advice on how they would get into campus. And yeah, it was a very kind of smooth transition, despite seeming really nervous and worried beforehand. It was a fun time, and Freshers Week was very enjoyable.
Yeah. And how, Sarah, I'll ask you again, how would that compare to now? What is like a typical week for you now?
So in first year, ours was slightly different because we had lots of online lectures because of COVID. But now a typical week in third year, slightly different to second year. In second year, we had you have, I think it's 12 hours of in contact time a week, which splits between 4 modules per semester, and that 4 modules, that each module has 3 hours, which will either be split into lectures or seminars. So it kind of varies. For like possibly one module will have kind of a 2-hour lecture and then a 1-hour seminar where you'll kind of develop your knowledge covered in that lecture. Or if it's more of a practical kind of module such as statistics, it would be kind of 3 hours I've kind of working through practically how to use SPSS and lots of different software and stuff, so it'll kind of be together, and then you'll have various different assessments for that, and then in your third year, because of your independent project, so your dissertation, you have kind of 3 modules in your first semester, and then plus your independent project that kind of runs along your first and second semester of your third year, with kind of the second semester only having 2 modules, and then plus your independent project module. So it's kind of, at the moment, we have 2 days a week at university, and then one other day has kind of our independent project meeting, which you can, it's held online, so you can kind of choose to where you want to kind of hold it from. But in second year, I think we had more like 3 days in person, and then third year is more like 2-3.
Perfect. Cool. And how would you say has the workload differed much from, say, first year to second year to third year?
I think for us, first year was a lot of A-level content. So I did A-level psychology, and a lot of the content was kind of similar to kind of the first year content because of the BPS accreditation. It kind of has to cover these core modules. So the workload didn't feel as much in first year, because a lot of it was recapping that kind of content, but putting it into a new setting that's kind of modern and up to date with current research. Second year was a bit more of an increased workload. I think talking to other people in my course, we found that to be the hardest year, just because you've got lots of modules and there's lots of new content that you haven't covered, and it's lots of like the key components of psychology, like your biological, your cognitive, your developmental, so there are these big areas of psychology that are being covered, and then in third year we found that it's slightly less of a workload because it's more independently managed because of your dissertation. So we've kind of enjoyed it a lot in this third year because you're doing an independent project on something that you personally care about. We have complete free reign, provided it gets ethical approval, to choose whether we want to study for our independent project. So it's kind of that you're doing a project that you care about, so it doesn't feel as much like workload as another module would be. So it's a little bit less than second year, we found, kind of workload wise, so it's quite an enjoyable third year.
Cool, perfect. So going on to the next slide, Abby, I'll start with you. What were your biggest concerns before coming to university?
I think I was really scared I wouldn't make any friends, and I wouldn't sort of fit in to like university lifestyle, because obviously it is quite different from A levels. It's a bit of a change in routine and everything, and I think I was really worried that I was going to feel like lonely because you know, you're not living with your family, and if you choose to obviously live at university, you're not living with your family anymore. And I think I was just really scared that I wouldn't sort of meet my people, but I was really fortunate I joined some group chats like before even starting university, so I'd actually spoke to a few people, including Sarah, before coming here. So I sort of, you know, started like chatting to those people, and also just chatting to different people, especially on your course. Like during Freshers Week, for example, they put you in groups and you had to work as a team. So that was a really nice way of sort of chatting to people on your course and getting to know people that way. So I quickly, like, that was probably my biggest fear of like, oh, I'm not going to have a friendship group. I'm not going to have people to like I do at home. But I quickly sort of, even within being at uni a week, sort of had people that I really like started to get to know and really liked their company. So yeah, I think that was my main concern.
Yeah, cool. And on that note, I know you touched on it a little bit there, but at the University of Chichester, what we do is we set up these like applicant groups. So usually we use like Facebook, and on those groups you can talk to students that will be joining the same time as you. So before coming to university, you'll be able to meet students that will be on your course, or perhaps living in the same flat as you, or in your same halls. So it's a good opportunity to sort of get to know them before meeting them for real in your first week in Freshers Week. And it does definitely help with settling those students in that might be nervous about making friends and that sort of thing. Sarah, did you have any different concerns to Abby, or fairly similar?
A big one was kind of the fear of not making friends, but I think another one for me was kind of coping with what kind of university entailed academically wise. So I didn't quite know how much of a jump it was going to be from A levels. So I was a bit worried of like managing workload. What kind of, was I smart enough to kind of study at this level? Kind of what was required of me that I might not have learnt before. But it was made very kind of quickly known that they were there to support you through that. The lecturers were kind of like, we're not shoving you straight in the deep end. One of our modules in first semester on psychology was a module actually covering like university skills. So it covered how to kind of reference, how to kind of write a lab report, how to write an academic style. So we were very much supported through that. And then into second semester, you have one on kind of interpersonal skills. So it's practicing for presentations and other assignments that we'd have. So it was very quickly kind of squashed as a concern, because I was given so much kind of content on how to kind of cope with and deal with all of the assignments and the bits that I was worried about. So, yeah,
cool. So I know you touched on that both a little bit then, but Abby, I'll come onto you again. How did you feel about moving away from home? I know you mentioned that you were feeling a bit nervous about making friends, but in sort of like the lead up to it, how did you feel?
I think I felt really mixed emotions about moving out, because I was excited to sort of have that independence and you know, live without my parents, and like, you know, I'd only just turned 18, so that was all really exciting. But I was also just really nervous even about like cooking for myself, because like I was quite lucky and I had often, like, you know, my mum was sort of just cook for all of us. So even like, oh, I need to like food shop and make sure I, you know, cook for myself and eat healthy and like, you know, have a balanced diet, like that was all like sort of concerns of like, I've never done that before. I've always had like help from other people. So I was particularly like worried about that, because it is a big change in your lifestyle and like sort of how you go day to day. But I don't know, you really quickly adapt, and things that you thought you were gonna like you just do it, and it's just fine. Like you know, you create your own sort of kind of meals, or what you want to cook for yourself, what you want to eat that night, and like you do just fall into a pattern of like, oh yeah, I'm just popping to the shops because I need to get this and this. But I did feel I was quite nervous. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I hadn't experienced it. I didn't know what halls was going to be like. I kind of, I'd read a lot and sort of watched TikToks and seen stuff on social media about like student experience. But I think like you have sort of, when you get there, you're just like, okay, well, it's happening now. And the first thing I can do is sort of chat to my flatmates and get to know them. And, I was just very fortunate. Like I really straight away like clicked with all my flatmates. So I felt eventually, like, especially by Christmas, like that was home, like the flat felt so like home. And I was really, really fortunate and grateful. But I did feel anxious. I think it's really normal to feel nervous and feel kind of like, you do sometimes think the worst, or what happens if this happens, what happens if that. But until you get there and see what it's like, and 9 times out of 10 it will go in your favour. And if you've got a flat of 6, for example, like I'm sure at least one other person is feeling a very similar way about moving out and living with people they don't know. So yeah, I just think it's exciting. It is, you do have to try and look forward to it. It's just such a big step and it's a new chapter, but it's very normal to feel nervous or anxious. And I think even if you voice that on the first day that you're there, I'm sure like other people are feeling the exact same.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something that you mentioned in there as well is about looking on things like socials, like TikTok and YouTube and that sort of thing. At the bottom of the PowerPoint there, you can see all of our socials for the university, and I know that we're very active on those. And previously in the past, we've shared some videos of students and doing like a sort of like a week in the life and moving in and settling into their accommodation. And they're up on our YouTube, which are good videos to watch, and it will definitely prepare you for when you do move to university. I know you've already spoken about the rest of the sort of questions on this side, so I'll skip over those. In terms of sort of the more academic based stuff, Sarah, I'll start with you. What type of assessments do you have in your subject?
So it's a real variety. We have so firstly exams, so in person kind of either multiple choice questions or kind of longer essay answers in exam conditions. And then we have more coursework style exams, which might be kind of essays to kind of lab reports, to kind of longer portfolios. So for our statistics module, we did a portfolio, which was kind of like a guide on how to complete statistical tests. So we had that for our continued journey throughout university. So when we're doing an independent project, we can come back to that manual that we created in second year, which kind of tells us how to do the tests that we were kind of learning at that time. So they're very useful assignments in the long run, which is really helpful. We've also done group presentations. So you kind of work within a group, say for our like forensic psychology and mental health module. We did a presentation on a topic of kind of our personal interest beyond a certain list that we were given, and then kind of presented that to a cohort. And then we've had like reflective essays, so that go alongside those group presentations. Longer essays, but they really vary depending on which kind of module it is. Usually you'll have 2 forms of kind of assessment per module. One of them is typically more of an exam style kind of assessment, and the other one more of a coursework, but they are moving away from less exams to more coursework. I know that as we've kind of progressed through the years, there's less and less exams for the students below us in the younger years. So it does kind of vary a little bit year by year, but it will be a kind of a mixture of both, which is kind of nice that you get to kind of show whichever assignment kind of works best for you. It kind of is shown somewhere within the course.
Cool. And Abby, how do you prepare for these assessments?
I think personally for me, if you have found, like, my advice would be, if you found a technique during your GCSEs or A levels that like really worked for you, like carry on using that. I think people sometimes think when they come to uni they've got to sort of like prepare differently just because it's in a slightly different format. But I've always sort of used for exams, for example, I always used like flashcards with like the answer answer on the back and question on the front. And that's always sort of helped me, and I still did that for my exams at university, because I knew that that was like my way of testing my memory of things, if I'd remembered them or not. So for the exams, I certainly did that. And I think for the assignments where you have where it's more like coursework, for me, I found it really handy to sort of do things weekly. I'm not sort of a last minute night before person, but they do often, like these assignments, they're sort of during the lesson sort of like give you hints of like what questions you could answer this week, or what part of the lab report you could complete this week, for example. And I think that's really helpful, because that kind of shows like where you kind of should be, or like if you want to sort of stay on track, like we're going to cover how to do an introduction of a lab report, for example, and then they'd be like, right, you could start your introduction now. And I think I found that really helpful, because also not going too far ahead, because often they will, if they're covering things in later weeks, you don't want to spend hours trying to write your method section, for example, to then walk into your lesson the week after and they're covering exactly what to put in your method section, and you realise like you either could have done it 10 times quicker because now they've given you what you need to do, or you know, you've kind of done it slightly wrong and you've now got to redo it after spending all those hours. So I think like, yeah, they often set you guidelines, and like just try and stick to those. Like you don't need to rush ahead. And obviously some people work better doing it like the night before, and if you work well under pressure, then absolutely, like, you know. But yeah, just if you stick to sort of what they're sort of telling you, and they will like help and assist you each week normally, like during as you're going through the module. So I think that's really important, because I think I've learned that the hard way before as well. Like Sarah will agree, trying to get too far ahead on something when it hasn't been covered and it actually isn't sort of worthwhile your time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know you mentioned that some students do prefer to leave it last minute, and we do actually just have a 24-hour library during exam periods. So do often have students that, if they are leaving it to last minute and prefer the pressure, will come in very late at night into the library and do their work there. And do you two girls use a lot of the resources that we have available, things like articles and journals and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Like
Cool.
the university library provides access. We also have subject librarians, so if we have any questions, we can go and ask them questions regarding like journal articles that might be useful for a certain assignment. And then all of kind of the books that we might have, like core textbooks, are all provided online to us as well, so we can access them from wherever we are. So yeah, there's lots of resources available.
And Sarah, how often do you have assessments?
You usually have them kind of towards the end of each semester. So kind of there's kind of two key periods of assessment throughout for each year at university. So kind of the end of semester one, so kind of around from like November to kind of January time, and then the end of semester two, so from like May into June time. But it varies depending on assessment. So it might be that we've kind of got exam week in January, so you might have an exam there, but your assessment, kind of more of a kind of a lab report, was due kind of somewhere November, December time. So it's kind of, you have them kind of, they kind of stagger them throughout kind of the end of the semester. So kind of when you start to finish learning that content, like Abby was saying, like you can kind of be working on that assessment. But yeah, you kind of probably have 8 assessments per semester.
Okay. And I assume you're given like an essay question and plenty of like time for you to prepare for it, right?
Yeah, so you're given kind of the assignment brief quite far in advance, so you can kind of look at it, and then you might be then covering the content throughout the kind of the following weeks, so you can kind of, as Abby was saying, slowly work kind of through it. But equally you can book to have like one-to-one appointments, feedback and consultation hours with any of the lecturers to ask them questions. So a lot of the time, say it might be released and then you start to do some work on the assignment, and then you realize, wait, I don't understand that. So we at any point can book on with any of our lecturers to kind of have a conversation with them, ask them any questions we might have, ask them to explain something in more detail, or advise us on kind of questions of does this bit count in the word count, or would you and using a graph or a figure here rather than writing it out. Like lots of small questions that you can kind of book on to ask them, and they're there to also support you kind of not only for the academic side, but your kind of your personal life. You'll have a academic advisor per year that's kind of there to support you throughout the course with any questions you might have, not only your specific lecturers for each module. So it's very supportive in that sense with assignments.
Nice. Cool. So moving on to the support that we have on offer. I won't go into too much detail into all the sort of ins and outs. I know earlier on one of you mentioned earlier about you go through like academic skills throughout your first year, so learning how to reference and that sort of thing. Obviously that's a new sort of thing that you will do at university that you may not have done at sixth form or college or school before. So we do have a lot of support on offer for that. We're also very big on our student health and wellbeing at Chichester. So as you can see in there, we've got a long sort of list of support. And I know definitely in terms of the sort of disability services that we have, if you disclose in your application that you have a disability, then the university tend to contact you before you start to see if there's any sort of extra support that you will need whilst you're studying at uni. And all of these supports that we have are accessible through a booking system that we have, and you can come into sort of like the SIS, so where the library is, and book onto those supports there. So in a few words, Abby, what would you say to someone considering studying a psychology or criminology course?
Absolutely, like go for it. Like it's so insightful, it's so relatable, it's so relevant. Just dive straight in and literally get as much as you can from the experience. It goes so quickly. Like being in my third year, I can't believe how near the end we kind of are now. But like just try and enjoy like everything you can, and definitely like if you've got an interest in that subject, whether you've studied it like previously before or not, if psychology or criminology has been an interest for you or you've read about it, like absolutely, I don't think you'd regret it. I don't think anything you learn you could say isn't useful or isn't relevant to sort of everyday life. And yeah, it's a very interesting and exciting topic. Obviously I do psychology. It's very there's so much, and you can never know all of it. Like there's always so many different viewpoints or theories and more stuff to learn, which if you like that kind of subject, then you'll love it.
Perfect. And Sarah, I'll ask you the same question.
Abby's probably covered it already, but like absolutely, yeah, I'd say like go for it. For me, it was like psychology is studying people. Like it's going to be useful, like Abby said, wherever you go. And throughout our time, I've learned how employable it is as a degree. And we've had lots of meetings with careers advisors and stuff like that, and they've kind of given us the options that are available. And if you care about people, you want to learn more about the kind of why people do what they do, it is just a subject for that. And with it comes a lovely cohort of students who also want to do that. And it is such an employable and fun course to study. And yeah, I can't believe I'm in third year again. Like make the most of every moment, like join societies, kind of go to as many extracurricular talks that you can, like make the most of talking to your lecturers, make those connections, network where you can, and enjoy the social side, make loads of new friends that hopefully you'll have for life. But yeah, enjoy it is the main thing.
Perfect. Okay, so coming on to the end, thank you to you both for agreeing to take part in this webinar. Thank you to anyone that's watching as well. And if you have any questions, you can direct them to the two emails that I've got on the screen there. So that's outreach@chi.ac.uk and studyhere@chi.ac.uk. Yeah, thank you.